Hello everyone, welcome to my Alien Isolation, Nightmare difficulty, no damage, no human kills walkthrough, and this is The Trap. And this is the longest video for this walkthrough so far. I mean, technically, Mission 10, The Trap, doesn't start here. This is actually Mission 8, but I consider Mission 8 as being part of The Trap, considering that it involves Marshall Waits, and Marshall Waits has been planning a way to essentially kill the Xenomorph. And since Mission 8 kinda ties in directly to that whole idea, I've decided to include it in this particular video. But Marshall Waits is going to give us the task of reactivating the transit system, and it involves getting inside of transit control, which is where we're at right now. And upon activating this console, a human is going to spawn, and I have no idea where he comes from or how the marshals don't spot him, but this just seems very odd to me. But you need to immediately pull down on that switch, and then you need to come over here. He's not going to have enough time to notice you. So you're going to be able to activate this, and this will free the android that is trapped in that room, and he is going to kill the human. And then after this point, do not replicate the strategy that I show in this video. Because I was being highly conservative on my ammunition, I didn't try to use the stun rod against this working Joe. But in actuality, the stun rod doesn't really have a lot of utilities in this game, and at most, I'm able to get 4 charges from the stun rod, and I can also get stun rod charges back from looting enemies and from looting boxes. So, instead of just trying to sneak around and just running the risk of this android potentially spotting you as you're trying to do all these interactions, use the stun rod on this android, and when you use the stun rod on this android, he is completely vulnerable to the maintenance jack, and it takes 8 hits from the maintenance jack to take out these androids. And it saves so much time. And because I've employed a very inferior strategy for this sequence, I've decided to put in a lot of moments where I've just sped up the sequence to compensate for the fact that I probably could have just taken out this android using the stun rod. But again, at the time, I wasn't aware how useless the stun rod would be later on. And the stun rod is only helpful against these particular working Joes. The Super Joes that you come across later on in reactor maintenance and for the rest of this game, they are completely invulnerable to the stun rod because they're wearing rubber suits, and of course rubber does not conduct electricity, so it therefore cannot overload their systems. Unlike with these guys will always get overloaded, and you're free to mash them down using the maintenance jack or just use your weapons. But I've now reactivated the transit system, so I'll be able to gain access to the tram that will take me to the Solomon's Habitation Tower, which is where the marshals are stationed. But the moment you interact with this switch right here, it is going to spawn in 4 humans. You need to get inside of a locker and wait for these guys to leave the area entirely. And because I'm having to wait in the locker for a very long time, I decided to speed up the video to about 8 times speed, so it makes this sequence incredibly short. But I make a mistake here. I get out of the locker a little too early, and I nearly get spotted by these humans. Wait for the 4 humans to go to the left. I didn't wait long enough, and I nearly get spotted, and I'm amazed they didn't spot me just then. But that's just part of the ambiguity of the humans on this game, because the humans on this game, they just behave so weirdly, and they oftentimes come across as being very bullcrap because of that. But starting from the beginning of this video, you're free to sprint around and just make noise because the Xenomorph isn't actually a threat at the moment. It's the same case here. The Xenomorph isn't around, so you're free to just sprint over to the Marshal Bureau. And I'm going to skip Mission 9 because Mission 9 is just a walking sequence and it's so boring and it just impacts the pacing of this game negatively. I really wish Marlowe wasn't in this game. He's such a boring character, and the way he is utilized in this game does not help in linking this game to the overall Alien franchise. They could have done so many other things to establish the link in a way that complements the overall gameplay style of Alien Isolation. This is a survival horror game with actual survival elements, not a walking simulator. Is that really how the developers wanted to portray the link between this game and the overall Alien franchise? It's just insulting.
Let's hope this thing
And as I stated before in the previous videos, I would have opted for a skippable cutscene rather than the format they chose. And to add insult to injury, Mission 9 was the mission that had so many softlock errors for me. And I'm going to show you guys the softlock errors near the end of this video as part of a blooper section. And it not only affected Mission 9, but it affected the beginning of Mission 10 as well, and that was the beginning of Mission 10, which was getting the flamethrower. For some reason, I just could not get Marshall Waits to give me the flamethrower, and he would not open the door, so I had to continually restart the game from my previous save, and it still wouldn't do it, and then I had to quit the game entirely, and then reload from the main menu, and it seemed to fix the issue. But guess what, guys? I also came across other bugs when I was inside of the Gemini Labs area, and I will definitely showcase the bug that occurred when I was in that area as part of the blooper section. And pretty much after that point in Gemini, I decided to turn on boost mode for my PS4 Pro, and I was hoping it would actually fix a lot of the performance issues that this game was having, and maybe prevent a lot of these softlock issues and game crashes from happening, and it did work, but I still came across some game-breaking bugs near the end of this game. It's just unbelievable that this game released in such a broken state. I do love this game, guys, I really do, but it's completely unacceptable that this game's quality is severely compromised. I don't care if Creative Assembly probably had a low budget when developing this game, or if there was some kind of tumultuous development cycle that impacted the quality of development, or if the whole plan of releasing this game on previous and current gen stifled this game's ambitions and led to the broken state I've seen. Like, if you're going to commit to an idea for a game, you've got to at least put out a serviceable product for the public. This is the buggiest game I have ever played by far, and it's clear that the one patch that this game received didn't do much in resolving these issues. I've played so many games that have had bugs and glitches, but almost all of them have had one or two game-breaking bugs. The last game I played that was really buggy was Assassin's Creed Unity, and I'm sure we all know how legendary that game was for releasing in the state that it did. For all I know, Unity is probably worse than this game when it comes to bugs, even after the numerous patches that it received. But even then, the bugs in Alien Isolation impact me more, because I like this game compared to Unity, and because of that, it really makes me angry when they happen to the degree that they do. But, to sum it all up, guys, if this game had actually changed up its plans for release, and Creative Assembly actually took the time to iron out all the flaws present in this game, I would actually appreciate this game even more. And I would truly consider this game to be a game worth replaying over and over again. Just for its style of choice, and just for its pacing, and just for igniting some spark within me that just completely freed me from my burned out state. And, you know, I was feeling very down before this walkthrough, as I've already explained. I don't know why I was feeling down, but that was just it. I was just feeling no ambition for anything. But then I just decided to play this game, and it freed me from that. It was just such an amazing feeling to just finally feel revitalized. But just going through those bugs, it's just so depressing at times. But enough about that. Let's just discuss what's happening right now. So, Waits is tasking us with sealing off this whole entire area so that we can trap the Xenomorph. This is all incredibly simple, and the good news is the androids will not attack you for whatever reason. So, just remain in a walking status and use your maintenance jack to seal off these areas. But you have to hit these switches first, because that's what the game is indicating you're supposed to do. And that will unlock the switch that's near the server hub area. And the server hub area is where the Xenomorph is going to be a lot more aggressive. Because you have access to the flamethrower, it's kind of given the developers liberties to essentially give the Xenomorph more freedom when it comes to dropping out of the vents or not. I mean, the same trick of just keeping a low profile at all times while the Xenomorph is inside of the vents still works, but there's always the possibility of the Xenomorph dropping down from the vents, and if that happens, you have to use the flamethrower. And there are some really cool designs with the flamethrower. So, one cool design that I really like about the flamethrower is that if you aim your flamethrower at the Xenomorph, it actually prevents the Xenomorph from running, because it's actually scared by the fire, and it will cause the Xenomorph to walk. And if it gets really close to you, that's when it'll start to run, and at that point, the flamethrower is not going to do anything. The moment the Xenomorph gets really close to you, the flamethrower will do nothing to stop it. And it takes about 3 to 4 bursts from the flamethrower to actually drive it away, like right here. But that right there, I didn't do any bursts, I just held the R2 button a little bit longer than usual, and it just went away. And also, have you noticed that there's no dialogue playing? There's normally dialogue playing. This is one of the weird audio issues I get, but normally when these audio issues happen, it triggers soft locks, but not for this sequence. In fact, it actually speeds up certain moments inside of the server hub. So, normally when the dialogue is playing, you have to wait in this area a little bit longer before it actually lets you out of this area. But on this recording, I get out a little bit faster than usual because of this weird bug. I don't know why this happens, but it is just very odd. But keep walking. There is a chance that the Xenomorph will drop down. be very careful of the audio as well. The audio on this game can be very dishonest at times. It can be very hard to triangulate where the Xenomorph actually drops down. I had a hilarious moment in one of my playthroughs after this walkthrough, where the Xenomorph had actually dropped down in the room that's right ahead of me while I was trying to unlock this door. And, oh my god, look at that just then. That was so scary. I don't know why the Xenomorph chose to go back into the vent just then, but if it didn't do that, I was dead. Like I said, you've got to be so careful with the Xenomorph. But, as I was saying, I got tricked by the audio when I was opening this door. When I opened the door, the Xenomorph was right behind the door, and it caught me by surprise. And it was quite an interesting experience, let me tell you. But, right now, the game is going to task you with surviving a little bit until Ricardo opens the lockdown. And it's so easy to do because all you need to do is hide under here. And if the Xenomorph decides to come over, just go to the other side of where it is and just wait it out. And because the audio isn't working as intended, I'm going to be able to get out of this area a little bit faster than usual. And when the door opens, it actually forces the Xenomorph to go away. So you're free to get out of here once Ricardo says that the doors are unlocked. And the Xenomorph isn't currently around right now, so this is really good right now. But the server hub area has been opened, and the Xenomorph is right there. See? It's not going to prioritize me, it's going to go into the vent because it's programmed to get out of here once the doors are unlocked. It's really nice design right there. But I don't know if the Xenomorph can still drop down from the vents, so still proceed with a bit of caution. And all we're doing right here is making our way back to the Lorenz Systech lobby, only this time it's been populated by humans that will attack you if they spot you. But I'm going to be very aggressive on that part because I despise the humans so much. I just want to get past them as quickly as possible, and it's going to involve sprinting. And I know it sounds very crazy because sprinting will of course attract the Xenomorph to me. But because the humans are in its line of sight, it's going to prioritize the humans that it can see before it actually goes and investigate the distraction that I made. So you want to go through here. There's an enemy to your left. So you need to keep track of where she is. And then when she's not looking at you, sprint to the other side of the lobby. And then you're going to have to crouch. That way you're going to be less visible to the humans. And they will not try to shoot you. And if the Xenomorph happens to hear you, you'll be able to hide. Just bear in mind, however, if the Xenomorph drops down and it forces one of the humans to come over to where you are, that's going to be kind of problematic because there's always the possibility of the Xenomorph spotting you as it's trying to chase down this one human. But that didn't happen just then. And if the Xenomorph happens to spot you, use your flamethrower to drive it away. Once again, just make sure that you are not very close to the Xenomorph, otherwise it will hyper armor through your flamethrower and just attack you. Which I can totally understand, because I mean, it has plenty of time to get you before it has a chance to fully take the damage from the flamethrower. So, I'll let him off. But even then, the flamethrower still presents with a very inconsistent design, where it's inconsistent how many shots it'll take to actually drive away the Xenomorph. And I know I mentioned 3 to 4 bursts, but I've had moments where I've done that, but the Xenomorph still hasn't gone away into the vents. It's instead just recoiled from the flamethrower, and it's gone into a very lengthy flinch animation, and then it's just resumed its pursuit of me. So, I sometimes have to do like 5 or 6 shots from the flamethrower in order to actually drive him away. But for the most part, 3 to 4 shots from the flamethrower represents the most consistent amount of shots necessary to actually drive the Xenomorph away into the vents. But just bear in mind, on Nightmare difficulty, you burn through flamethrower fuel a lot quicker than on easy difficulty. So 1 burst from the flamethrower is equal to about 25 flamethrower fuel. So taking that into account, it takes roughly 75 to 100 flamethrower fuel to actually drive the Xenomorph away, which is why you have to be very conservative with your flamethrower fuel. Although an important thing to note is that this encounter with the Xenomorph in the Gemini Labs and also in Project KG-348, when we do this encounter with the Xenomorph, we're not going to be seeing the Xenomorph for a while. It's only when we get to reactor maintenance that we actually encounter the Xenomorph. But the most interesting thing is that between Project KG-348 and Reactor Maintenance, we'll actually lose the Flamethrower, and the new Flamethrower that you get in Reactor Maintenance has its full ammunition, so you get 500 Flamethrower fuel from the new Flamethrower, and then you also get an additional 25 Flamethrower fuel in Reactor Maintenance, so you always have 525 Flamethrower fuel when you start Reactor Maintenance. So if you have low fuel on your Flamethrower right now, and you just get to Reactor Maintenance, you're going to get all that back, which is so handy. It's really good design. And really, you don't have to be so conservative with your Flamethrower here. I mean, if you get bad RNG, though, that's a different story. And just to prepare for bad RNG, it's best you be very conservative with your Flamethrower fuel. But another good option for driving the Xenomorph back into the vents is Molotovs. Although, Molotovs have a very big problem where they have a lot of phantom range, and the amount of times you're going to damage yourself whenever you throw a Molotov is very high. So, you have to really make sure you throw Molotovs at a safe distance to ensure you don't get screwed by the phantom range. But Molotovs are so consistent compared to the Flamethrower when it comes to driving the Xenomorph back into the vents, because they do a lot of high damage in a single instant. With that high damage, it causes the Xenomorph to go away very consistently. And the good news is, there's going to be a big encounter with a bunch of androids later on where you will be able to get 2 Molotovs for free, and because of that, you won't have to slot a lot of resources into crafting Molotovs, and Molotovs take a lot of resources to craft. And you can even place them on the ground when you get the correct blueprint for it, but the place function for a lot of the tools on this game doesn't really help. The throw function is so much better than the place function. I can't imagine why you would ever want to place a noisemaker down on the ground or place a Molotov on the ground when they detonate so quickly. You know, I wish there was some kind of manual detonation system that you could utilize with each of the tools to ensure a lot more control, but that doesn't exist on this game, unfortunately. It's dumb that it works like that. And the blueprints on this game, they aren't that useful. In fact, for some unknown reason, the game gives blueprints during moments where you don't need the blueprints, and the blueprints are placed in areas that you would never ever go back to because it screws with the overall flow of the game. And there is a trophy on this game for getting all the blueprints, so if you're wanting to go out of your way to get all the blueprints, you have to go to all these different areas that you're not supposed to go to as part of the main story in order to get them. And Carcinogen SDA feels the exact same way as I do, and I 100% agree with them. You know, I think, for the most part, a lot of the tools on this game are completely pointless. The only tools I really utilize are the Molotovs, the noisemakers, and the medkits whenever I'm trying to heal myself from mandatory damage. But aside from those tools, I haven't really utilized anything else. I mean, before I did this walkthrough, in one of my earlier playthroughs of Alien Isolation, I did utilize the pipe bomb. Although, at this point right now, I don't even know where the blueprint for the pipe bomb is, and pipe bombs are pretty pointless unless you're using them against large groups, and there's never really a situation on this game where you're dealing with large groups, and when you're going for the no human kill requirement, there's only really one big encounter where I can definitely understand why you would want to use the pipe bombs, and it's against the large group of androids that you encounter, as I've already explained. Oh, this right here. The Xenomorph is currently active down below, so I'm trying to lure him up here. By striking that wall with the maintenance jack, it's going to force the Xenomorph back into the vents, and he's going to go through a vent that's on that floor there. But I'm already down here, and he cannot come through the same area as that ladder, so that's really handy. He has to go back into the vent if he wants to get back over here. But this is buying me enough time to initiate the distribution conduit, and you have to call out a service android if you want the distribution conduit to work correctly. And then this is where you're going to have to play a little bit of a waiting game. Oh, and also, by the way, you might have noticed there was a downed android. Be very careful of any downed androids that have all of their limbs and their eyes are glowing. You have to make sure you are continually looking at them as you're moving past them. If they get off camera, they will grab onto you with phantom range. They grab you from like several feet away. It is so stupid, and you will take damage. So, always bear that in mind whenever you're trying to sneak past any downed androids. But this is a problem right now because the Xenomorph is currently patrolling this area, so I need to be extra cautious right now. But he's over there, and this is really good RNG right here. So, now that I've initiated the distribution conduit, these doors over here, the ones that are to my right now, are active. So I need to go through those doors when the Xenomorph gives me its back. But I actually make a mistake coming up. I ended up uncrouching for a little bit because I thought I was far enough away from the Xenomorph, but he hears me and he starts running, and this is panic-inducing right now. Watch this. So, I think I'm far enough away, but the Xenomorph starts to run after me, and he could have killed me just then. Look at this. This was so scary right here, but I successfully drive him off. At that distance, he would have caught me. I'm very lucky that he didn't. That was so scary just then. I mean, I don't mind getting caught by the Xenomorph because I like getting up close and personal with the Xenomorph, seeing as how I'm just in love with it, essentially. You know, I always like these kind of intimate encounters with alien life forms in these kind of like survival horror games, and also in like survival horror movies, or not even in survival horror movies. You know, it's always so interesting just seeing the character panicking while this alien life form is just moving ever so closely to them. It's like in those Scooby-Doo moments where the monsters are so close to closing in on the characters and nearly close to grabbing them or killing them. In fact, I stated before in my Last of Us Part 2 walkthrough that Scooby-Doo was actually one of the main reasons why I decided to do my Alien Isolation walkthrough. It's because I watched the Scooby-Doo movie from 2015 that was actually a parody of the Alien franchise, because the monster that's encountered in that Scooby-Doo movie was actually an alien, and just looking at that alien, it reminds me so much of the Xenomorph, given its very similar physiology and just the way it looks. It looks so similar to the Xenomorph. And I really liked some of the moments where the alien came very close to devouring Shaggy and Scooby, and also with nearly chasing them down and grabbing them. It just looks so cool. And it almost reminds me of what I'm doing with the Xenomorph in this game. You know, I really liked the alien in that movie. It's just such a shame that they didn't do so much with it. I really didn't like the movie overall with the way they tried to, you know, make it more focused on these pointless characters rather than on the alien itself. That's just kind of a problem that all the Scooby-Doo movies have, where they mainly try to focus on all the banter that the characters have rather than on the actual monsters themselves. I mean, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated was a different story because they were really trying to build towards the central villain. And I did like the ending of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Like, Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated was just a very dark show for a kid's show, essentially. In fact, I've always wondered what it would be like to actually make horror games based around these characters. Like, can you imagine a mature survival horror game based around Scooby-Doo? I would gladly direct that kind of game, and I would really make the alien feel very lethal with some of its kills and some of the horrible things that Scooby-Doo might see. I mean, it sounds rather sadistic, but, you know, I've always wondered what it would be like to put, you know, a kid's story in an almost mature-like setting. That would be so cool. You know, there have been people who have done Scooby-Doo horror fan games, essentially, that feel kind of mature, but they've always been very half-assed and not really living up to my expectations. But, you know, if a Scooby-Doo based horror game could feel just about as dark as Alien Isolation or like Resident Evil, for instance, while still maintaining the essence that actually defines Scooby-Doo, I would gladly get behind that. That'd be so intriguing to do. And this whole concept of Scooby-Doo being portrayed in a very mature fashion has actually been done properly in a TV show called Supernatural. There's one episode of Supernatural called Scooby Natural, and it is considered by many to be the single greatest Supernatural episode ever, because it put the Supernatural characters alongside the Scooby-Doo characters, and it created such a unique kind of experience. They brought in the essence of Scooby-Doo, and they combined it with some very mature elements. There were moments where people would get dismembered. There were moments where the ghost would come very close to killing the protagonists. And then with the Scooby-Doo characters just being enlightened to the whole idea of a very mature theme, and just having them break down so much and just going crazy. It was very, very intriguing. I mean, it was very humorous at the same time, but I think for my dream Scooby-Doo horror game, I'd focus a lot more on the fear factor and the seriousness, and utilize the humor whenever possible to serve as moments similar to that of Resident Evil Safe Haven moments that really give you a break from the horror. And much like how Alien Isolation feels very different to your traditional survival horror game, My dream Scooby-Doo game would feel exactly the same way, as being very different to the traditional survival horror games that so many people have come to love nowadays. And I would take very similar approaches to what Creative Assembly did when they were designing the Xenomorph on this game, with the amount of animations that it can do, with the kind of intelligence that it has. And I would just greatly expand upon such systems further. It'd be such an interesting experience. But enough about that little diversion. We now have this sequence where we need to wait for the airlock to pressurize, and the Xenomorph is currently around. This is practically a very personal encounter, and when you interact with that button, it will always cause the Xenomorph to go near the button to investigate the distraction, and then this is where you'll have to use your flamethrower to draw it away, or just hide, because most of the time, whenever I'm doing this, and I just sit right over here, the Xenomorph always goes off in the other direction, so once it does that, and the airlock fully pressurizes, it's a simple sequence, and when you get inside the airlock, it triggers a cutscene, and you're pretty much safe, and that will conclude this part of the game. This is practically a one-on-one encounter. This is very personal. Waze has practically given us a little one-on-one time with the Xenomorph. That's just how I view this situation right now. But the airlock is open, and all I need to do now is just sprint for it, because it's going to trigger the cutscene. But before I conclude the commentary here, I'm going to provide an updated strategy for the Gemini Labs, because I didn't really do the best job in providing a more streamlined process when getting through Gemini Labs. And also, something I forgot to mention, the cameras, do not underestimate the cameras. Do not think that they work in the sense that if you stand in its square-like formations, then you're going to be detected by it. It will actually see you even when you're not inside of that square-like formation. It actually has a lot more range than you think, so you need to be incredibly careful when being in the camera's line of sight. So that's why I wait a little bit before I decide to move up, and I just wait for the camera to move more to the right. And then I disable the camera, and then I get in here. There's actually a better path you can take when you're trying to activate the breakers. And also, something I forgot to mention about this android over here. You have to interact with this console when this guy is not looking at you. If he sees you while you're interacting with this console, he will attack you, and he will deal damage to you. So wait until he moves away to the right of this terminal, and then that is your opportunity to hit this console command over here. And we have activated the distribution systems. Now, instead of going for the breaker that's near the beginning of the area, I'm going to go for this other breaker over here, because I didn't actually utilize a shortcut in my original recording, because if you go inside of the vent that's nearby when you interact with this breaker, there's actually a switch you can pull, and it opens up a shortcut back into that room with the android. And I had noticed it earlier, but I assumed it just opened up some pointless side area, but I didn't actually notice the door right next to it opening, so I completely skipped out on the perfect way of doing this sequence in a more streamlined process. But I sped up the video here just to get directly to the switch, just to show you where it is. It's inside this vent right here, and do you see the door right next to it? I don't know how I didn't notice this earlier, but this leads directly back into that room with the android. It's so good. And because you already know exactly how to get to the other breaker, I'm going to speed up the video here once I get down the ladder. And I'm going to take a different approach to getting this other breaker, because instead of going directly through the camera, I'm just going to go to the right. And because the camera is in this position right here, when I interact with this breaker, by the time I get back to the camera, it's already in a very favorable position where I can interact with the rewire system and disable it. And this will allow me to get directly to the distribution conduit and activate it easily. But I'm once again going to speed up the video here just so I can get back to the distribution conduit quickly. And once again, I've employed the service android to store up the distribution conduit for me so I can stabilize the energy flow. And the Xenomorph is actually going to appear, so I'm going to have to deal with it once again. But this time, I don't make the same mistake of uncrouching at the wrong moment, because I don't underestimate the Xenomorph this time. And it takes such a long time for this android to actually initiate the process. But there we go, that's the first one done. The Xenomorph is nearby, I can hear it right now. I'm going to prep my flamethrower just in case. But I get very lucky here because the Xenomorph decides to not come to me, but he's just going to continue facing in that direction. And he goes back into the vent. So now I'm just going to move onward, back through the same way. Only the route I take to get back to the elevator that leads to Project KG-348 is slightly different because I'm actually going to not go up the stairs in that smoky area, because all that does is just waste time. Just remain on the same level and you will be able to get back to the elevator that leads to Project KG-348 very quickly. But I can hear the Xenomorph right behind me. So it comes very close to catching me right here, actually. But I'm able to get through, and now I'm just gonna be able to hide in the smoke. I don't know how well the smoke conceals you on this section, because again, it just feels like it doesn't do much on Nightmare difficulty. But the elevator is directly ahead once you go through this door, and this will conclude this section right here. And now we have some bloopers coming up, which demonstrate the bugs I encountered.
You managed to get transit.
So you see this right here. Do you notice how the subtitles aren't playing for Waits' dialogue just then? It means that the scripting has messed up. It's the same case that occurred when I was inside the server hub area, only it didn't break the game. This completely breaks the game because you need this audio to play in order for the scripting to progress properly. And I restart the checkpoint, and this time the dialogue doesn't play for Ripley correctly, so I once again encountered the same softlock issue, which is so stupid, and I don't even know how I triggered it, because I just played through the section normally, and it happened. And this is the beginning of Mission 10, and once again, there's no subtitles playing, which means the dialogue isn't properly progressing the sequence, so it doesn't trigger the scripting correctly, and I can't gain access to the flamethrower. And then this is the bug I encountered in Gemini Labs. So, my menu is not going away. And because my menu isn't going away, I can't interact with anything. So I'm permanently stuck. So now I need to restart the checkpoint. And once again, I don't know how I triggered these bugs. I went through the game like normal, but it just happened. And these kind of bugs were exactly the reason why I turned on boost mode, and it seems to have improved the game slightly, but I still came across some game-breaking glitches that I'll definitely show in this walkthrough because they were almost unavoidable in the end. But this concludes the trap. Stay tuned for the future parts. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.